Welcome to the network where dreams collide. BSPN, the place where champions hide. Dick Aiken at the mic, he's your trusty guide. Fantasy, football frenzy, let's enjoy the ride. Phil Ratio with the stats crisp and clear. Mike Oxland's got the insights you need to hear. Barry McCockiner keeps the humor near. The fantasy mid-season review is here. Fantasy football, it's our game and more. Score with BSPN, watch your team soar. Trades and touchdowns from shore to shore. The mid-season review, that's what we're for. Every kickoff, every catch, every play. Dick and the crew break it down each day. Two men kissing, hey, that's pretty. Jimmy won't listen to what these haters say. Keller Kilpatrick might not even win 4. CJ with a season building legacy lore. Strategies and moves make the legends soar. Fantasy football frenzy, it's what you adore. Fantasy football, it's our game and more. Score with BSPN, watch your team soar. Trades and touchdowns from shore to shore. Fantasy football frenzy, that's what we're for.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome in. This is the mid-season review. We're going to go around with some of my colleagues here tonight. We're going to do some introductions here in a moment to see who's with us. We're going to talk about where we are in this season. Who's doing well? Who's doing poor? Have expectations been met? Where are the numbers at? All right, let me introduce some guys here. First, I got Phil. How you doing tonight, Phil?
Good Dick.
That's it. Good Dick's all he's got. That's all he's got. All right, Mike, how you doing up there in Ohio tonight for us?
Oh man, the leaves are falling and the football is here. What a great time to be back on the network, ready to talk some football today.
There it is. We're just going to go around the horn here, break down some of these teams, see where they're at right now, talk about some injuries, some positions they're in, maybe look at the playoffs and see where it all can go from here. First, we're going to start with one of my favorite teams, particularly,
Head,
but
shoulders,
having
knees
a
and
tough
toes,
time this
toes.
season. It's more unexpected
Whoa,
than not.
We're going?
Really one of the more consistent teams in this league, but he took a draft strategy change that was a little bit different this year. And now he's here in this spot. It's Tallahassee Taint Touchers sitting with a 1-7 record. For the first time in his career, 7 losses. It's an insane amount this year for him. What do you think on this one, Phil?
Yeah, hard competitor every season. He's just in a tough spot. He's at a weird spot where, unfortunately, he's not scoring the points amongst the league that he needs to, but he's also getting his ass beat in points against as well. I think we kind of jinxed him talking about never missed the playoffs, never lost in the first round of the playoffs. We can go on and on. But I called this a few years ago that I think the football knowledge, the new players coming in, the rookies in the second year and third year, I think it's finally catching up to a manager who doesn't necessarily keep up with the trends like he should.
Phil, you sound like a fucking moron.
A 6-game losing streak right now. That's a tough spot to be in. I don't really know how you bounce back from that. 1% playoff chances, it says, still alive. What do you think, Mike?
Absolutely not. Look, there's a question we have to ask when it comes to team DNA. Is it the players or is it the coach? The players or the coach? We saw a long line of consistent playoff runs from this team. Who is a key factor in that? Josh Allen, quarterback for the Buffalo Bills. First season without Josh Allen. Look, when you've been successful, you got to pay your guys. You got to pay up for those guys. He was going to cost a higher draft pick. We've seen a shift in the league these past 2 years. Quarterbacks have gone earlier and earlier in the drafts. He didn't pay up for his guy, and now he's paying the price. 1% might as well be 0. Pack it up. pat yourself on the back for the record you do have. You still have one of the best records in the league, and let's look forward to next season. Just adjust and move on. That's all you can do.
I mean, we even saw Josh Allen get traded this year. He could have been in that market. I mean, it was pretty open. It was pretty clear that Josh Allen was going to get moved, and everyone felt like the rumors were hitting the street pretty hot that manager California Brewing Company's team wanted to get him on the market and get him moved. I don't know. I don't make the calls. I just report on what happens here. It's his team, and
Look, leave my boy Keller alone, all right? His team's actually not bad. That's the thing about this. He's losing these games, and I'm telling you,
it's
no,
a struggle
you
year
shut
for
up.
me.
Shut the fuck up. I'm telling you, his team has got studs. I mean, Jalen Hurts, he can't really move like he used to, but he still gets touchdowns in the end zone with his leg and is on a great team. James Cook, ballin'. BJ Robinson, underrated top 5 running back. Keenan Allen is still the man, despite, probably going to get hurt. But Chris Olave, Trace McBride, D Hop going to play for a real quarterback in Pat Mahomes. I mean, this team is projected 128 points, and they've got people like Raheem Mostert on the bench who led the league in rushing touchdowns last year. So maybe they're not, playoff eligible, but they are going to play season spoiler this year, and they're going to fuck some shit up moving forward. Don't think this is an easy win anymore.
I don't know. I don't know. Looking at this next team that's having a pretty tough year as well. They did do something pretty cool this year. They had the first tie, but also sitting with a 2-5-1 record. It's not looking like playoffs are pretty likely. How do you feel on Jeffrey Dahmer this year over there, Mike?
Yeah, again, this is another one of those teams. You just got to chalk it up to a lost season. Now, I do think this team has the potential to play spoiler for a couple of opponents down the line. We have a very tight playoff race. As far as their playoff prospects, that tie is really, really going to hinder them in that playoff race. It's the difference between being 3 games behind and 3.5. May as well be 4. And at 4, you're basically out of the picture. And look, they made some trades earlier in their season. They had some injury bugs on their team, but unfortunately, neither the trades nor the injuries, nothing was going to help this team get to a better spot where it is. It just comes down to draft strategy. You just got to take the notes, learn, move on.
Definitely just feels like an off year. You got to kind of, like you said, just chalk it up, see where you're at with the league, maybe learn a little bit, scout a little differently, hope to play, spoiler at the end of the season here. You got anything to add on this one, Phil?
I mean, I'd agree with both of you guys. Playing spoilers the best this team has right now at 13%. As a chef, you can either cook or you can get cooked. And this chef is in the oven right now, golden brown and crispy. I say we go ahead and take them out, slice them up, and send them next year.
That's I mean, pretty well said right there. I don't have much more to add on this team. You got anything for me there, Barry? Wow, that's a lot to take in there, Barry. I'm not really sure what else to add on that one. We're gonna look at this next team. They're having a pretty struggling year as well. I don't really know where to go. I mean, they're a former champion. They have some caliber on their team, but I don't know what else to add to this team. They're really performing where you think they'd be at this point with the roster that they have. We're looking at Judge Judy right now, really struggling on the season, not putting up the performances every week. Maybe some weeks with some consistency. Obviously, had the injury bug pretty, here and there. Some last minute injuries that have cost her. How you feel on this one, Phil?
Yeah, and this team is one of 3 teams that currently sits at 3-5. Unfortunately, she has the worst odds of making it to the playoffs right now. I think just by the division she's playing in. We've often accused this manager of having other high priorities in life, and that's fair. We all have things. But you should devote at least some time to your fantasy football as well if you want to make a chance of getting to the postseason. And I don't see that happening for this team this year. I'm glad she's a part of the league, always active in the chats and stuff like that. But as far as playoff football goes, I don't know if I can see that in her future.
I have a hard time not chalking this up to the injury bug on multiple times this season. I mean, you lose your first round pick. You lose your starting tight end before the second game of the season for what, 4 weeks? That's pretty tough. I mean, he's come back and he's one of the best tight ends going right now. I mean, I get it. The points are low. The points against are high. They're not defending their home turf. I don't know where they really go from here. They have a chance to make the playoffs still. I mean, do you think they have a real shot anymore, Mike?
Look, the season it can't be about playoffs if you're Judge Judy. It's got to be about culture, right? I agree with you. I've never seen a case of the injury bug hit a fantasy roster as bad as I've seen this one, right? Nobody who drafted CMC in any league thought that he would be gone up to 10 weeks at the start of the season. We thought maybe 4, but 10, that's a whole swing in the season. I mean, that's a fourth round pick. That's a gamble you take in the fourth round, not the first round. And so I think for this manager, it's got to be about culture, right? How can you rally your guys that are getting healthy, play spoiler, get some wins? And to be completely honest with you, gentlemen, Judge Judy's been playing some good football as of recent, right? 2 of those wins have come pretty recently. And look, I actually have this team going 5-1 down the stretch these final 6 weeks. They're going to play some serious playoff spoiler. I think they finished the season about 8-5. It's what I have in my book. But at the end of the day, I just don't think it's going to be enough to get it done.
8-5 and missing the playoffs would be a tough spot to be in. I mean, it really comes down to the draft. I feel like position you're in sometimes too. Getting that first pick, having to wait until that wraparound there at the 24 spot. Obviously, it comes down to some strategy, but you're also disadvantaged when that first pick is injured right away. Do you agree with me on that one, Barry?
Yeah, Judge Judy, I believe, is the worst team in the league. The record book might not reflect it, but just what's been happening to this team, Ingram, CMC, Mike Evans, CJ Stroud, who was the man last year, has fucking fallen off a cliff from fantasy perspective. I mean, she's riding out with just backups on backups because they can't catch a break with their injuries. And unfortunately, yeah, I see this team finishing absolutely last in the year. I agree with you.
We're looking at this next team right now. Again, another former champ, really struggling this season. You kind of chalk it up to the injury bug, some poor performances overall. I don't know really what to say with it. He made his first trade finally on the year. I don't really know where he goes with this season. I think he's looking at playing spoiler as well. Chalk it up to next season. It's been a couple tough weeks here. Where are you thinking on this one,
Hey,
Mike?
Dick, has anybody ever told you that your mustache, it looks like somebody fucked up in the character creation mode and was just too lazy to change it?
Yeah, this is just a sad fall to see for a former champion. You hate to see it. It seems that championship hangover is still looming over them largely. But yeah, you look at the roster top to bottom. There's just not a lot to get excited about. I think if they want to maybe salvage their season, it's a possibility of maybe moving a few more pieces. I mean, they do have a pretty decent bench, and I think if they can package some players, they might be able to make a little bit of a run. But that is a tough division. Really, your entry point into the playoffs is going to be if you nab that bye, which when you have a team 3 wins ahead of you, is just not realistic. It's just probably not going to happen.
Definitely not really looking in the playoff position right now. I mean, I don't really know what to say on this team. He's your number one fan. You have anything for me, Barry?
Barry McCockener's number one fan. Man, do I love this team name. I got to say, salute to manager Sam Brickta. You know, and the team, they're not totally out of it, but if you look at this roster, there's virtually no hope. Even with the newest suspicious trade that just happened, giving them the second best quarterback in the league this year, Baker Mayfield, um, it's come to reason that this manager maybe doesn't always follow through with the best of business ethics. You know, I love this team. I love what they've been doing for years, you know, former champion. So I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt and an opportunity to speak their piece to the world as well before I really come out with the full story. But, you know, ultimately, I don't know if Baker is enough to keep this team alive.
The fandom runs deep with this guy. I mean, I don't know what else to add. Phil, you got anything for me?
Not much more than my colleague Mike said. I mean, on paper, there's some good pieces on this team. I think maybe some trade value could be there if he wanted to try to salvage, try to get the most out of his season. I mean, again, he's one of the teams sitting at 3-5, and I think really when we get to this team is where we stop saying the season's over because there is still a chance with a 24% chance of making the playoffs. So this is not an impossible feat by any means. And honestly, this team early in the season, I thought they were packing it in and going home. So they did have a brief resurgence, and as of late, just dropping a few kind of bumped them back down. But I wouldn't by any means close the door on the season. I think this manager still has something to play for if it is playing spoiler and winning, getting a good record at the end of the year, or a decent record, I should say.
The team I think that's 3-5 and really has a decent spot sitting in this next spot right here, and that's Duval Diamonds. 1,000 points scored already. I really don't see how they're in this position besides a couple tough weeks where they've had some really fluky matches. I mean, losing by less than a point one week, losing by a couple points a few weeks before that. They're a few matches away from being right in that playoff picture already. I see this end of the season really going in their direction. They're already in the 8 spot. I think they can kind of sneak into that playoffs potentially if they can kind of figure out how to win some of these games, close it out. Obviously, Monday night can be stressful, but it's really about locking it down there. I mean, do you think this guy even has a chance this year, Mike?
A chance, absolutely. Look, this is a manager playing with a lot of heart. They pulled off, in my opinion, one of the savviest trades I've seen in the history of this league. They acquired Joe Burrow and sent off 2 pieces of junk, quite frankly, to Union stagehands, and that really flipped the switch on their season. That's when you really saw the points explode. Now they're getting healthy. The problem, in my opinion, is this schedule down the stretch. I think it's tough. And look, these are big play players. These are players that can win you a given week. These are also the kind of players that are going to get doubled and potentially shut down on any given week. And there's a couple teams I'm a little nervous about. I still don't know if they're for real or not. The Cardinals, I'm not sure. We know the Chiefs aren't playing their best ball right now. And when you have Josh Downs in your flex, when that's sort of your wide receiver 3, and we don't know who the quarterback's going to be, it leaves a lot of questions. So, man, this is going to be the biggest mystery the rest of the season, in my opinion.
I like the point you made there about that savvy trade he made earlier this year. It was one of the best moves I feel like he made to really progress his season. He saw an opportunity and he attacked it. Getting Joe Burrow, I think, is that kind of turning point for this season. You get one of the quarterbacks that's going to be in that top 5, top 3, possibly category in scoring. It really changes how your offense is going to go about it. Do you think anything else on Phil?
Yeah, I mean, just kind of echoing what y'all said. I mean, it's hard for me not to feel bad in some sort for this team as much as I can as a broadcaster. The close losses that you talked about, even some of the wins have been close. Hell, this team is the definition of keep you on the edge of your seat. Y'all talk about the quarterback room. I think that was the biggest point of improvement in this team's season. That the quarterback rooms start of the season, Trevor Lawrence and Anthony Richardson, who he took a chance on late. He's completely changed that room now, has Kirk Cousins and Joe Burrow. I think that can go a long way. Some injuries, most notably to Rashee Rice, who would have been taking that flex spot. That's a tough one to see, but also increases the target rate for Travis Kelce, who he has as well. So that can be sort of bittersweet when you think about it that way. This is the first team we're discussing that I do have making it to the playoffs, although one more loss could derail that whole argument. I think this team needs to be on the straight and narrow from here on out, or they're looking at the next season too.
Definitely, a tough position to be in here. He's got a lot of work to do to be in the playoffs. Almost feels like he needs to run the table, can afford possibly one more loss along the way, but I don't even know if he could there. 5 losses is pretty tough to come back from. We're going to look at this next team that I feel has real potential on the season. Another team that has really battled the injury bug here. A really savvy team on the waiver wires, honestly acquiring one of their better positions this year on the waiver wire. We're looking at Euro Wizard Spina. He acquired Darnell Mooney this year, and he's having one of the better seasons, a top 25 wide receiver picked up on the waivers. It's pretty tough to do. And he's consistently putting up some points, and he's lost two big players this year. I mean, Isaiah Pacheco was putting up crazy numbers before he went out with that injury. I see him making the playoffs, I think. Really winning some games here down the stretch. How do you think this one plays out for him, Phil?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think this is the second team we've discussed who I have sneaking into the playoffs. Like you said, fantasy waiver wire is the way to go. If you don't work the waiver wire, you can kiss your season goodbye most of the time with all the injuries, the bye weeks, and the unexpected change-ups that we don't see happening. You mentioned Darnell Mooney, not only top 25, I believe top 15 in the league right now in wide receivers. And we had a colleague of ours that I won't name before the season really high on Darnell Mooney. And we were giving him shit. And so the season he's had is really shaped out to be something that we could admire. And there are good pieces on this team. I see this team going up. Really, he's competing, I think, mostly with AB Taco Corp right now. And I'm really excited to see how that head-to-head goes the rest of the season and what they, the type of punches they're going to throw.
He's really got to throw his weight around here at the end of the season. I mean, we need Deebo Samuel to come back to really make his team competitive, I feel like, down the stretch. You think this former champ has playoffs in mind this year, Mike?
Oh, I do. And in fact, I would say this team is a lot to make the playoffs. Look, there is a lot, not just to like, but to love about this roster. This is a great example of being active on the waiver wire, but also being patient with your guys, right? Amari Cooper, it looks like he's going to be a superstar the rest of the fantasy football season, and the bench is deep. There's a lot to like. Xavier Legit from Carolina, right? He's going to be the wide receiver one now in Carolina. Does that amount to much when Bryce Young's your quarterback? Who's to say? Hunter Henry, look, that is a rookie quarterback's best friend is the tight end. So I expect big things there. Jerry Jeudy, it's a new day over on the Cleveland Browns with Jameis Winston as quarterback. So look, there is a lot to like here. I think there's a lot of depth here. And so I expect this team to not only make the playoffs, but make a pretty deep run.
I think they're pretty lined up to be in that position, kind of looking like they're getting healthy, possibly get Pacheco back to make a little playoff run. I mean, if he can get 100%, that would be massive for their team. We're going to move along to this next 4-4 team here. A former champ kind of sneaking around there right now, having some really, really big weeks. I mean, putting up 150, 160 points. It's good to have that right now in the stretch when we're looking at all these bye weeks and you still have the depth to be in that position. How do you feel on California Brewing Company, Phil?
I feel good. He's right there approaching 1,000 points. And I think a lot of that has come recently. I think I can say unexpected rookie phenom Jaden Daniels has really upped his team. High scoring pieces that he has. I have this team making the playoffs coming out of the East Division as well. Again, savvy on the waiver wire, somebody you got to worry about. High scoring this last week in, what was it, week 8, I believe. Highest scoring team. So, any given day, this manager can put up the points needed to overpower your offense, and not a team I want to see anytime soon.
Like you said, he has Jaden Daniels, so he was able to make that savvy move, go ahead and get rid of Josh Allen. I felt like, honestly, he acquired more in that Josh Allen trade than Union Stagehands was able to acquire in that Joe Burrow trade. It's the savviness of the trade market. It can change your entire season. I mean, California Brewing Company has the second most points scored against him this year, and he still put up a 4-4 record and fighting right along for the playoffs. I have him making it this year. I think he's going to be very competitive. You have anything else to add to this one, Mike?
Yeah, look, I hate to burst the bubble here, but I have this team just missing the playoffs. I have them ranked as my number 7 seed at the end of the season. Because look, there is a lot to like on this roster. I mean, the quarterback, I can't name a single quarterback in this league that I wouldn't want more than Jaden Daniels right now. But that running back room is awfully scary. DeAndre Swift and Chase Brown, it's not the most consistent running back room. I think the wide receivers can win you a week, any given week, especially CeeDee Lamb, who has a very favorable schedule down the stretch. But I just don't think it's going to be quite enough. I think they're in a similar position as Duval Diamonds, where that early season record is just going to come back to haunt them and unfortunately just push them right outside of the picture.
Definitely going to be a stretch down here. We're going to be fighting for the playoffs. We're going to see some good matchups. I mean, we have some great ones coming up here in the next couple of weeks. I think he has a good chance to make it. Obviously, lets up a lot of points against him. He's seen some tough matchups this year, but what can you do? You just play the matchups you're given. I think I think these trades he's making are going to eventually work out for him. He's made some savvy moves. I've enjoyed his season so far. We're looking at this next team right here, who's honestly looking at a season-changing shift right now. I feel like Atlantic Beach Taco Corp made a heavy investment in the Miami Dolphins offense this year, and finally getting Tua back this year. He's getting Devon A-Chain to get some touches again, get some more space in that offense going, getting Tyreek Hill some space to go in as well. A lot of what their offense is built on is his motion and his understanding of the offense. That's what really Tua provides, and he's obviously doing a lot better now. He put up a lot of points last week. I think this team can make a solid run and get into the playoffs this year. He's done it before. He's had a good season last year. He's kind of figuring out the pieces right now. There's a little bit left to be desired with depth on this team, but I think he can really make a run. What do you think, Mike?
Yeah, look, this team essentially put together the same roster they did last year, which really worked in their favor down the stretch of the regular season. But I would expect similar results with two boom bust offenses here with the Miami Dolphins and the Ravens. Look, they are going to put you over the top most weeks, but then there's going to be the weeks you really wish you diversified your roster. And unfortunately, I think that's going to rear its ugly head at some point. Hopefully, not the playoffs for this manager. I do think they make it in. I just don't see them going all the way.
Yeah, you talk about the diversification of the roster. I'd have to agree with that. And then depth, I think, is something that Dick touched on. There's a lack of depth on this team. Personally, I don't know if this team is going to make it. Really, what the hell do I know? Because the playoff picture is looking really tight right now. So I could be wrong. Like you said, it is a resurgence for his offense as far as getting Tua back with Tyreek Hill and Devon A-Chan as well. But other pieces worry me. The Zach Moss piece worries me some weeks. Obviously, he's capable of putting up points, but just little weak spots like that. The suspension to Jamison Williams, we got to see how that plays out. And then the lack of depth that I touched on before. So, if something bad happens, this team could be looking at a totally different situation coming up. Get Tua back, get your players back, but then lose other pieces that I think could be detrimental to your future this year.
Definitely has to play that back and forth with the Ravens offense, the Miami offense. Hope they're putting up these points every week. Has both tight ends and the Ravens offense kind of has to play a back and forth there as well. Hopefully get the points out of it. I think he makes it. I do not think he wins it this year. I wouldn't be surprised if he's a first round bounce. Like you pointed out, Mike, it's that inconsistency of the offenses. If he has a bad week for one offense, it's probably an L in the playoffs. I mean, you got to put up points. We're gonna look at this other team that's sitting at the 5-3 spot right now. Our reigning champion, 1-2, sitting with a pretty good chance to make the playoffs right now, 64%. In my opinion, I think one of the more consistent teams in this league, put up pretty consistent points every week. For me, I honestly have them in this 1-2-3 spot in the playoffs here, and I think he makes a pretty good run down the stretch. I don't see him losing too many more. You have anything to add on him, Phil?
I just think, the savviness of the trades. I think he made a pretty good trade. I think he got a lot for it. I'm worried about the durability of the quarterback situation right now with Jordan Love going up and down a little bit. We got to see how his health is looking. Other than that, I mean, I think it's a really good team. He's done it before. He's experienced ties of going to the playoffs and winning a lot of games. So I'm looking for this team to make it in. Other than that, I think that's all I got.
Wrong. Wrong, 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 wrong. You are so wrong. Wrong, 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 wrong. This team sucks. 1-2 is on fraud alert. I'm telling you, they've got 3 potentially awesome running backs, which is a great core to any championship team, but they're all banged up, and one of them's on the Patriots. The other crazy thing about this team is they're still riding out with injury riddled Jordan Love. He's got rib, he's got a knee, he's got a hip. Seems like every single week something's wrong with this guy. So really it takes on the running backs to carry this team. And guys, I just don't think that's going to happen because of how violent that running back position is. And especially with one of them being Brees Hall, with that fucking kid, Allen, whatever his dude, that Allen kid is an ox. He is huge. And so I see Brees Hall's production dropping in this later half of the season. And ultimately this team's successful too.
One of the biggest things you need down the stretch is going to be depth. I feel like this team is kind of lacking that, like you pointed out, in the QB positions, one of the biggest spots. I worry about that Jets offense down the stretch. You don't want a team that's going to be feeling like they're kind of quitting, you know? I do feel like he has a really good chance to make a real good championship run again, Mike.
Man, it's tough to say. This team's sort of an enigma. I mean, you look at these names on paper, and I mean, I think it's worth noting that, this manager knows that things have to change. They have a degree of self-awareness. They only have 4 players on their roster that they originally drafted, which has got to be one of the lowest percentages this league has ever seen. They've made a ton of moves, hopefully all in their best interest. That's what the manager would hope for. But yeah, you look at these names, it should be more successful than 5-3, and it isn't, which tells you that these offenses aren't consistent, right? And when the offenses aren't consistent, it's tough to say whether or not a team like this can make a title run. But, you know, never say never. I do have them sort of fluctuating as they have all season, but just barely punching their ticket in.
I think they kind of slide in that spot as well. Obviously, we have to have some teams out if some of these lower teams are going to sneak in. I think 1-2 has a chance to make the playoffs. I have them in it myself, but if we're sitting here in a couple months and they're completely lost out, I wouldn't be surprised. I think it does come down to depth. If you look at their bench, a lot of those guys wouldn't be on some other teams' rosters in the end of the day. But you have to, pick your battles. You have a good starting lineup, and hopefully you can put in some fight every week. And I think they will and make the playoffs here. We're going to look at this next team that's on the other end of that tie. We have Union Stagehands, who kind of feels like they traded away their season in a way. First tie we've ever had, obviously a pretty cool spot, but they have that homerism, that Patrick Mahomes trade, kind of looking for the Chiefs. I'm surprised he hasn't picked up DeAndre Hopkins yet, trading away maybe his best player. I don't know at this point. I mean, what do you think on this guy, Phil? Does he make the playoffs? He feels like he's diving down now.
Yeah, unfortunately, my fridge is working. Should I go to Home Depot and buy another one? My dishwasher cleans the dishes. Should I throw it out on the side of the street? You started 5-0, right? Am I right in saying that? You lose 2 games, you tie 1. Now you have to kiss another man on the mouth. And how do you feel about that? 2 of the worst trades I've seen this season come from this manager. While all is going well, what are you trying to change, brother? What are you trying to change? Your team was firing on all cylinders. It's just disappointing to see, I think, some of the lack of self-control. You're in a good spot. You feel like you want to make a change, get frisky, and then you go and fuck it up for yourself. And again, you got to kiss another man on the mouth. New league rules we're just seeing this year. So, I mean, were you aiming for that? Or, I don't know. That's all I got.
I mean, the questions have to be asked. I feel like, well, you're aiming for that? I don't know. I really, there's not much more to say. You pointed out these terrible trades. I really think they were, like I said, chasing that homerism. Like you said, the car's moving, it's rolling. Let's go ahead and change the oil, I guess. I don't know. It feels like some teams don't know how to handle winning sometimes. You hear that said by coaches around the league. You think you knew how to be in that position right now, Mike?
No, I don't. And look, for manager Jim Irsay, Tyler Hammond, you got to act like you've been there before, right? You can't just be throwing a party for yourself, acting like the end of the season has happened when it's not even a third of the way through. Like my colleague Phil pointed out, at 5-0, they just made a bunch of unnecessary moves, right? You can't play the end of the season before you've even got there, right? And I think when you look at other teams in the league, right, they make most of the roster maintenance happen on the waiver wire, unless you're in a situation like the two teams they traded with, 1-2 and Duval Diamonds, where things were trending the other way and a more drastic shift was needed. There was no shift needed. There was just simple maintenance. Look, the bench isn't wonderful for this team. Do I think they can salvage their season? Possibly, but is it difficult to say that this team could win it all? Absolutely. I think when they traded away Joe Burrow, they traded away their championship hopes, but they'll finish the season above 500. They'll get themselves a nice playoff appearance, and hopefully they can just take that momentum with them into next year.
You quoted Jim Irsay there, and they can do the same. They can hang that playoff banner. You won. You made the playoffs, but at what cost? I mean, you had a championship, it felt like. I don't know. Let's move on to another team that kind of did the same thing. They hung that playoff banner real early, that championship, that mid-season. You guys didn't think I'd be here. Brock Mason, they are a surprise, but are they celebrating too early? Did they peak already? I don't know with this team. It's hard to call week to week. They've had some great matchups. They've had some terrible games, but when you're two in the league, 6-2, but you're also fifth in scoring, it's hard to be, called that big hot shot player. How do you feel on this one, Phil?
Brick Mason, or what's his name? Brock Mason?
Brock
Or
Mason.
Cock Mason?
There
More
it is.
like it. No, I mean, I will give this team props. You know, coming into the season, we had little hopes. He got roasted at the draft party for his selection. They ended up working out pretty well. This is, I mean, 6-2, you can't really complain. Like you say, fifth in scoring, so that's not too impressive. And then also, I believe, least points scored against him. So that is a huge factor as well. What is the level of competition? You look at the college football playoffs, there's teams that maybe should be ranked higher off their record, but just based off the level of competition, we can't really say whether they're top two, top three. So that's something I'm really heavily looking at this team with, like you said with Union Stagehands. I mean, act like you've been there before. Not that you have, but you got to act like it sometimes. Fake it till you make it. I think you still have good pieces in play. You had a lot of haters on the Josh Allen move, I think, on both sides. I mean, obviously, I'm thankful they upgraded their quarterback position, and we see Josh Allen doing some wonderful things. I think that was a good thing for this roster. But just make sure you're making the right moves, playing the right players, keep on the waiver wire, and I think your season could go really well. I have this team going on to the playoffs. We'll see how far they can make it there.
I think a lot of this comes down to health for this team. Investing in these rookies does concern me long term with health. These small little nicking injuries as we get later in the season, they're not used to playing at this level for this long, this intensely, especially if they're pushing for the playoffs. Obviously, Brock Bowers, don't think he'll be pushing for the playoffs, but when you have Marvin Harrison Jr., I think he's going to be playing pretty consistently, pushing for that. I think health is a big spot. I have this team in the playoffs, but I wouldn't be surprised if they're a first round bounce, maybe second round bounce. Do you have anything on this one for me, Mike?
Yeah, look, 6-2, you can't ignore that. You also can't insult this manager's intelligence. They went out, they acquired Josh Allen. Look, when Tua got rocked, they needed to make an adjustment. They needed to go get a piece. They got one. It's kept them afloat. But like my colleague Phil said, dead last in points allowed. Most points scored against them in a win. In a win. 111 points. 111 points. You look across the league. This isn't the trend. This isn't the status quo. Let me just read you their wins as far as how many points were scored against them. 104, 76, 66, 107, 99, 111. Look, the clock's going to strike midnight on the Cinderella story. There's no championship. I put this team on fraud watch early on in the season. Right now, they're making me look like a fool, but check the scoreboard at the end of the year. That's all I have to say.
I definitely think it's a team that might have celebrated a bit prematurely, but I mean, when you're there, you've never been there before, I guess go for it. I don't know. We're gonna move on to one of the more fun teams this year. Oh, what's that, Barry? You have something to add?
I tried that rehab shit that y'all put me on, and no, no, no. Get away from me.
That's a lot. It's a lot to add. But we're gonna go on to one of the better teams this season. An almost surprise, a Cinderella story coming to be. A story breaking into the hearts of America. You could almost shed a tear over it. Team SpongeBob, 6-2, one of the best scoring teams of the year. Honestly, one of the more complete rosters we have. Guys on the bench putting up points every week, guys on the starters putting up 20, 30 consistently. Probably the best running back room in the entire league. I mean, I don't see how this guy isn't the favorite right now to just easily run away with the championship. You have anything on that, Mike?
Yeah, look, it's hard to bet against Team SpongeBob right now. They are indeed a Cinderella story, just a really good example of a team that carries the momentum of the season before. Look, they started out as we expected them to last year. Look, they were shaky, made a run down the stretch, punched their ticket to the playoffs. Look, they hadn't been there before. They got bounced in the first round, but you know what? Hungry dogs run faster, and this team is running towards a deep playoff run. You got to be excited for this manager. It's hard to hate on them. I do have some concerns down the stretch for this team, but ultimately, it just comes down to consistency, health, and the quarterback position. The quarterback is really the only position that scares me a little bit. Caleb Williams and Sam Darnold, that's not who I'd want to be putting my championship hopes on.
Definitely the one I thought he'd make a move by this point to acquire one of those big name guys with the depth he has on his bench. He's a good spot, I think, right now. I think he makes a great run here. Like you said, hungry dogs run fast. He really cut his teeth last year, had that tough loss in the playoffs. I think he's going to bounce back this year. I have him down as my champion right now. I don't see how you don't. Where do you have this guy going out this year, Phil?
Phil, you're the only grown man that I know that still looks 12 years old.
Yeah, I'd say similar to you. Probably close to that top spot. You never know how things will work out in the playoffs. Sometimes some unforeseen circumstances. Like you said last year, cutting his teeth. I think really took the momentum. One of the teams most heavily took the momentum from last year, moved it to this year. You look at the pieces. You mentioned Sam Darnold, maybe not a piece you'd want, but a surprising piece for this year. And then going down the roster, Saquon, Derrick Henry, can't get much better than that. McLaurin, always underrated. And then DJ Moore in the flex spot. This team is stacked. They're similar like we mentioned to Brock Mason. Points against is relatively low, but when you're the highest scoring team in the league, I don't think that affects you as much, especially sitting at a 6-2 record. I have the team going far, and nothing would surprise me at this point.
I love this event here, boys. Love getting you guys together. Barry, you should probably get that rash looked at. Otherwise, tonight is all over, boys, and have a good one. All right.